Joining me now is pollster and political consultant Frank Luntz. Frank, thanks so much for joining me.
It's an honor.
Earlier this week, you were with a group of bipartisan lawmakers who hosted the families of hostages taken by Hamas. Can you first talk to us about how this event came about?
Well, it came about over roughly 96 hours because I didn't get the phone call asking if I could help until Friday evening for an event that was happening on Tuesday. And there were a bunch of people from the U.S. and from Israel who were eager to ensure that the voices of these hostage families from Israel, and by the way, they're from a number of different countries. There are German people involved, Americans involved, Canadians, British, French, and they were just afraid that their voices wouldn't get heard. So they wanted to do something in the U.S., in Washington, D.C., on the same day as this big, massive protest that I'm told had somewhere in the neighborhood of 250,000 people attending. They wanted to do something with the hostage families to remind the world that there were still 240 people held captive in Gaza. And so they came up with the idea of flying them all the way from Israel to Washington with a one stop in New York to pray for their safe return. And I couldn't say no. No matter what side you're on, Israeli, Palestinian, you still feel for these people. You understand their pain and their anxiety. So I said, yes, I would try to help them.
And how did you coordinate with this bipartisan group of lawmakers specifically?
There are several individuals who got directly involved in assisting in reaching out to members and finding us a place to do this on Capitol Hill and making sure that this would be successful, but even reaching out to them. We didn't have our first phone call with anybody until, I don't know, Saturday night or Sunday for an event on Tuesday. It was truly a miracle that all this came together. And thanks to some support on Capitol Hill, thanks to an organization of people, this was sponsored by Chabad Israel and Chabad US. And they were just determined. And I got to tell you something. They believed it would work. I was the awful human being in this. I was telling people it doesn't work that way. You're not going to get senators. You're not going to get congressmen. I was the naysayer. I was working 12 or 14 or 16 hours a day. But the people at Chabad believed that a miracle would happen. And that's exactly what we saw on Tuesday, a miracle. 13 Republican senators, 9 Democratic senators, a truly bipartisan impact from the most important people in Washington. By the way, the Republican chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and the Democratic leader of the Foreign Relations Committee both appeared together, side by side. It was the Noah's Ark of political involvement. And these senators and congressmen, these Republicans and Democrats, stood side by side with the people behind them, the hostage families. And I have to tell you, I spent Tuesday morning with those families, and I listened to the story of a mom, of a son who was in one of the most famous videos. He watched his girlfriend being taken away, being taken hostage. And you see the two of them pulled apart as she's driven away. To meet that mom face to face and to have her tell me the story was gut-wrenching. And the story of a woman, a young woman who 8 members of her family were either killed or taken hostage. It just breaks your heart. And I'm listening to these stories because I had to find certain people to come up and participate with the senators and congressmen. People who could keep their composure when all around them were signs of real pain and real suffering. It was, frankly, I don't know how I will ever do something more significant and how there will be a greater impact than what happened up there. More senators attended this event with the hostage families than went and spoke at this big event for 250,000 people. I'll never do anything as impactful as that, and I will never do anything as emotionally draining and just really painful.